Good morning, second graders. Happy Monday. We don't have a live class today, but we still have these teaching videos and you have some homework assignments. And Monday is a great day to look back and see if there's anything you need to catch up on to make sure you're getting a really strong start all on top of all the work assignments you have. It's also, because you have a little extra time, you could go check out the music lesson videos that Mr. Brewer's been posting and your art assignments that Mr. Trout has posted. So take the little bit of extra time we get back from not having live classes just to read and to study. And I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow morning. Okay, first thing, I'm going to introduce you to your new memory verse. This week's memory verse is John 6:38. For I have come down from heaven, not to do my will, but the will of him who sent me. John 6:38. Who do you think is talking here? Someone is talking about themselves, saying, for I have come down from heaven. Who do you think is the person talking, the I right here? These are Jesus's words, okay? He's talking about himself, and he's saying, I came from heaven, but I didn't come to just do what I want to do. I came to do the will of him who sent me, him, the Heavenly Father, God, okay? So we've been talking a lot about Jesus. We've talked about how loving he is. He lovingly sacrificed himself for us. When we talked about the Easter story, we've been talking about how powerful he is. Last week, we spent the whole week talking about miracles that he did and ways that he has power in our world. And this week, we're going to talk about the different ways that he's our example. Not only is he loving and powerful, he also wants to invite people to follow him. And when we follow him, we see that he's someone who wants to know God and follow God and do the will of God. Okay, so we'll spend this week learning about that and hearing more about Jesus and who he is. And we will work on memorizing this Bible verse. Okay, so today I want you to write down the words to this Bible verse to begin practicing it. You can either just pause this video and copy it here, or you can look it up in your Bible and copy it down onto your own piece of paper, all right? And then I'd like you to do the worksheet in your Bible story workbook, page 176. It's just an overview of who Jesus is, what he's like, and a little crossword puzzle. Okay, time to jump into math. We finished up our previous chapter on Friday. You guys all who turned in your math quizzes that just wrapped up everything we've been learning did really, really well. So I know people mentioned that some of that concept was challenging while other people thought it was kind of fun. But across the board, people did well. So you guys, way to go growing strong math brains. I'm proud of your hard work. I'm excited to start a new chapter. Now, on your worksheet, we're doing 227 and 228 is your assignment today. Get that out and have it in front of you, and we'll work a few of the problems together. What you'll notice it's called on there is equal sets, which right now lets you know equal sets. Oh, we're going to be doing multiplication again. Yay. We love multiplication, right? It's like magic, okay? So I wrote the first problem up here. I drew these delightful pictures of cupcakes. Those are cupcakes with sprinkles. And we see these cupcakes. There are 1, 2, 3 sets of cupcakes. Let's answer that first one. 3 sets of cupcakes. How many are in each set? Each one is a set of 2. And how many cupcakes is that altogether? 3 sets of 2 cupcakes is 6. And we can come up with that answer either by just counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or skip counting 2, 4, 6, or just memorizing our multiplication problem. 3 times 2 equals 6. When we practice our multiplication facts and have them memorized, we can just know that answer. But while we're just introducing these concepts, you'll have lots of options of drawing pictures and really playing with and understanding what we're doing when we're multiplying. Now you have a few like that on the first page. This is literally the first question. So you have other sets that you need to do that all of them have a picture that go with it, and you will first figure out how many sets there are, how many are in each set, and how many that makes all together, and then you will write it as its multiplication fact, okay? Now the bottom has a graph, a picture graph, and I wanted us to look at this one together because an important detail whenever you're doing a picture graph is to always read all of the information, because the graph is a way for you to get information and do math, but to get the correct answer, you have to pay attention to all the details, all right? So this is a chart, a graph of breakfast specials, and how many people ordered French toast or croissants. But you can't just look at this and count the people, okay? You have to look at, what does this picture here mean? It doesn't mean one person. It actually means 2 orders. So each stick figure means 2 orders, right? Let's take that information and find out how many French toast orders were there. Well, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 the little pictures. So that's 5 sets. And how many do each of those little pictures stand for? They stand for 2. So how many French toast orders were there? 5 times 2 equals 10. All right? And now we can look at the croissants. I love croissants. Let's look at the croissants and see how many orders were there of croissants. Well, there are 2 stick figures. So there are 2 sets. And each stick figure stands for 2 orders. 2 times 2 equals 4. So there are 4 orders of croissants. So you see, if you just glanced at that and didn't pay attention to all of the details, you might not come up with the correct answers. But when you're using a graph, it's important to read each bit of information so that you can use it as a good tool to get information. Now the back of that worksheet is more of these type of problems, and then also just a review at the end to give you a chance to just work on your basic math problems. So I want you to work hard, and I look forward to seeing your work. It's time for science. We've been talking about forces that cause motion, pushing and pulling, and what all that means, things being in motion. I've had fun reading the chapter so far in science. I have had fun thinking about all the different ways we see things in motion all around us all the time. I really enjoyed how we were learning about Sir Isaac Newton and how he was observing the world a long time ago and put the things he observed down into laws, that this is how we can see things working in motion over and over again. So it's been a lot of fun to think about that and learn that. I love the activity that you have today for your homework. It is to take a forces walk and record the observations that you make while you're on your walk. You'll in your workbook, it's page 139, and it says at the top, take a walk with your teacher. I wish you could take a walk with me. I can imagine where we would walk if we were doing loops around our San Francisco Christian School, but we can't walk together, but you can walk with someone in your family, and I want you to take a walk outside, and I want you to notice things that you see are in motion. And when you see something move, I want you to write it down, the thing that's in motion. And you might just observe the things in motion. Then I want you to either write that minute or after you're back at your house and you're thinking back about it, I want you to notice whether you think you were seeing a force that was pushing or pulling to make that thing be in motion. All right? And you're going to notice a lot of different things if you really have your observation scientist eyes on. You're going to be thinking, I wonder what, before you even go for your walk, you'll already be thinking like a scientist. I wonder what I will see that's moving. And I wonder what forces are making it move. So when you take a walk, I want you to be observing, and I want you to list what you see in motion and what kind of force you think is making it move, a push or a pull. And some things, the force might be invisible, right? Because maybe you're going to see a leaf fluttering by on the sidewalk. Well, the force that's moving that leaf is the wind. You can't see the wind, but you can see what its force is doing. It's pushing that leaf along, okay? On the back of your worksheet, I want to see an illustration of some of the movement you saw. And I was thinking it's so fun. You might see a lot of different movements along the way on your walk, but if you wanted to, you could put them all in your picture as if they all happened right by each other. Or you could just put your favorite thing that you saw in motion while you were on your walk. You want to be thinking about, what's the strongest force I saw making something move? Or what's the most interesting? Okay, so I look forward to seeing the results of your forces walk and your observations about it. You'll want to turn that in, but then also hold on to it, because we'll talk about it in our live class tomorrow. Right after this video that you're watching now, there's going to be a song that I want you to listen to and learn. The words are going to help us remember what we're learning so far about forces and pushing and pulling and things being in motion and how they can change direction. And so the song will play just after this. For reading this week, we get to read a story, the same story almost all week, so it has several parts. It's called Granny Nell's Dulcimer, all right? It begins on page 132 is where that part begins, so why don't you open in your reading book. Let's read some of this together. At the very beginning, it says this: folk music. Folk music comes from many different countries around the world. Each country has folk music that is different from the folk music in other countries. The words from the songs tell something about that country or the people who live there. Folk music can be enjoyed by anyone. Adults teach their folk songs to their children, so the folk songs are often shared among families for many years. Folk music can be played on an instrument or sung. The dulcimer is one of the instruments that can be used to play folk music. So the story that we'll be reading is about folk music from a part of America. So folk music in another country is going to sound different. The themes of the song, the lyrics of the songs will be different. The instruments might be different. And the type of music will sound different. But the story that we're reading, Granny Nell's Dulcimer, is set. It's a realistic fiction story. So it's a made-up story, but it's set in a realistic way. There's no fantasy elements or make-believe in it. And it's set in a place in America called the Appalachian Mountains. All right? So we're going to start reading it. And I want you to pay attention and think about, while you're listening, if you can figure out what is a dulcimer. Okay, that's one of your reading or your listening questions. Let's begin it together. Page 134. For just a moment, Tansy looked down at the clear water and almost lost her balance. Her thin arms waved in the air as she tried to keep from falling. Then, putting one foot in front of the other, she inched across the log. Whew, I thought I was going to fall in. She let out her breath and sat down on a tree stump. A blue jay chattered at her from a nearby tree. He seemed to be making fun of her. Oh, hush, Tansy said. I know it's a small stream, but who wants to get wet? The bird hopped back and forth across the twigs, scolding Tansy. Then he stopped, tilting his head to one side to listen. Faint music drifted down the trail. What is that? Tansy whispered. She stood up and she brushed off her skirt. As she crept up the trail, the music became louder. She pushed the leaves aside and she stared at an old gray cabin. Tansy left her hiding place and moved quietly around the stone chimney. An old woman sat on the porch, holding an instrument in her lap. The woman plucked the strings with something that looked like a feather. The music made Tansy think of sunshine and laughter and faraway places. "Come here, child," said the woman. Tansy started as though she had been dreaming. "Well, come on up here, where I can get a good look at you." The woman motioned Tansy closer. Tansy slowly climbed the steps and stood in front of the rocker. You must have come up the back way," said the woman. "Not many people use that trail nowadays. Do you live around here?" "Yes, ma'am. We just moved back here," Tansy replied. "Folks around here call me Granny," the old woman said. The rocker creaked as she leaned back. "And you must be Jim and Nora Ledford's daughter." The girl's eyes widened. "Tansy Ledford? How did you know?" "I just guessed," said the woman. "You look like your mother did when she was about your age. I know your folks from way back. Ask your mother about old Granny Nell." She patted the rocker next to her. "Come sit down." Tansy pulled the rocker closer to Granny Nell and sat down. Granny slid a dried chicken bone up and down the strings of her instrument. With her right hand, she plucked the strings with a turkey quill. Granny played one song after another. Tansy discovered she knew some of the tunes. "Just watch," said Granny. She began to play a lively tune called "Turkey in the Straw." A tiny head popped out of the branches next to the porch, and then a squirrel scampered out on a limb. Tansy clapped one hand over her mouth to keep from laughing. The squirrel hopped up and down. It looked like he was keeping time with the music. "Shh," warned Granny Nell. Tansy sat very still while Granny played "Pop Goes the Weasel." A flock of blue jays swooped down into the yard, and they flew around the yard, diving at each other. Tansy's eyes were bright with laughter when Granny Nell finally stopped playing. "Do they always come up when you play?" Tansy asked. "I usually play the same time every day," Granny replied. "My little friends wouldn't know what to do without their afternoon music." She ran her fingers over the strings. "What is that thing you're playing?" asked Tansy. "A dulcimer," answered Granny. "An old-time dulcimer that belonged to my mother." Granny looked at the sun. "You'd better be on your way before the sun sets. Come back tomorrow and I will show you how to play the dulcimer." "Will you? For sure?" Tansy asked. "Sure will," Granny replied. "Now scoot." I like this story. What is the setting of this story? I like the words of this story. They're very descriptive. They help us really picture where it's happening, don't they? It's in a mountain community, and there are woods, and there's a stream, there's trees, and Tansy sees lots of different small little woodland animals. And who are the characters that we're meeting so far in the story? The main characters so far are Tansy and Granny Nell. So they just met each other. But what do you think, what do you notice that they have in common? Or they've already discovered about each other? They both like music. And I think it seems like they both also like nature as well. They seem really interested and entertained by the different animals. Okay? So, and the dulcimer, that listening question, dulcimer is that special instrument that Granny Nell is playing. And it's so interesting, the description of it. It just makes me imagine what it must look like, and I wonder what it sounds like. And I will find us some dulcimer music that I can, I'll either put in the lesson video tomorrow, or maybe I'll post it on Teams, some examples of it. So I hope you are enjoying the story. I really like it, and we get to read more parts, find out what happens next as the week goes on. I would like you to do worksheet 317 and 318. 317 is a reading comprehension page to help you think about the story and what you've learned so far. And 318 is a review of contractions, which we've worked on, and I think you're going to do a great job.